All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Marks for Marks. I know it's wicked late into January, but this is the first Marks for Marks episode of the new year, and I'm absolutely thrilled to start 2025 off with probably one of the more special episodes to me that I get to record in the entire time that I've done this podcast, as some recent news and developments in the storied career of one of my friends has taken a big change in direction, and I'm very excited that we get to talk about it today. So, without further ado, I'm joined by one of the former forwards for the Rhode Island Rams men's soccer program, Connecticut native like myself. I'm joined by now current Austin FC MLS draftee in the 2025 MLS SuperDraft, Patrick Gryczewski. Patrick, how are we, dude?
Dude, crazy. Thank you for having me, bro.
Dude, I'm just so happy that we get to finally do this, because while I was working with the men's soccer program this past fall, I was trying to get more members of the program to hop on this show because you guys have some very interesting stories, and it was a very diverse locker room, one that had boasts a lot of guys coming from a bunch of different backgrounds to really make up was a hodgepodge group of guys competing for the Rams. But you, as a captain this past season, one of the seniors that was really looking to make strides and really attempt to push into a professional career. I know you and I had a bunch of conversations about that throughout the season, wondering what direction it was going to go, because I know that this last season for you was definitely tumultuous. It had a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but ultimately it ended in, to me, what was one of the most surprising fashions that I could have expected from you, ending 2024, getting your name called in the MLS SuperDraft in the third round. So, I mean, we're going to talk about your whole story, but I mean, I feel like it's best to talk about that right now. I mean, Pat, just as you finished the season, you started to assess your options and figure out where you wanted to play, what you wanted to do professionally, like in what direction you wanted to take. How did this whole MLS draft process begin?
Man, to be honest, like you mentioned it was kind of a surprise for me too. I mean, obviously, like the season for me, it went well in the beginning. I thought I picked up on like crazy momentum. Scored a couple of good goals. The team was performing well, and then it was just injuries left and right. So after that, I was just like, like kind of got to look at the realistic side of things. And I didn't play a lot. Obviously, had the big injury with the ankle that kind of sent me out for a few months. So I don't know, my head was kind of all over the place. First, kind of like there was a side of where I could get surgery on the ankle and a side of where I could just kind of push through it and see what the options are. So yeah, I kind of didn't even know which step to take in that area. I was kind of just going day by day. But obviously, like playing pro was the end goal. And in terms of the draft, at that point, like playing, I don't know what it was, like 8 or 9 games this season, I was like, the draft's like, it's gone, it's done for. But playing like MLS or USL or even like going abroad to Europe, it was still like in the picture, and it's still a goal at the end of the day. What that would be or what that would look like, I had no idea. But yeah, like I said, it was just kind of day by day.
And so, even with the fact that you played 9 games this season, you started all 9 of them, you contributed well, big goal against Providence. That was probably the highlight of the season, at least for me, working with you guys. That was so fun. But this season, you did prove that, like you showed in previous seasons, that you were a consistent contributor and really were the focal point of the offense for Rhode Island. And now that leads me kind of just want to see where that all began for you at the college level, because you have had a very interesting collegiate soccer career, to say the least. We've had a number of people who have transferred feature on this show, and every transfer story is different, but this one is very particular. And so, Pat, take it away. I want to hear a little bit about just that instance of you decide to commit to play soccer at the University of Hartford as a Connecticut kid. That initial just sort of year of you decide you want to commit to Hartford, you get there and you realize, I am not going to be here in about 8 months' time. Yeah. What was all of that like?
I mean, I feel like I have to kind of start like going into high school, because that's kind of where it all began. Like I played high school soccer. I didn't play like academy or any of that fancy stuff, to be honest. And like junior year, like we were a pretty successful high school team. So junior year, I started picking up some interest, but it was only like a few D3 schools, and then I had like University of Hartford, and then also the University of Vermont. So I didn't have a lot of like options at all. And at that point, I was kind of like a homebody, so I was like, all right, U Hart like will be the best option for me, and so I committed there. And kind of junior and senior year, I was just like playing with hopes of going to U Hart and like doing my best and showing like what I could do. But at that time, I honestly had no idea about like college soccer or anything like that. I didn't know how any of that stuff worked, like D1, D2, D3, or who was good or the conferences or anything like that. So I chose UHart because it was local, and I ended up going there my freshman year. But the summer before, like leading up to that freshman year, like there was some news about the school that they were transitioning from Division I to Division III because of funding or something like that. I mean, in all honesty, I still don't even know to this day what the real reason was. But obviously there was a lot of rumors up in the air and stuff like that. And that summer they actually said it wouldn't happen until 2025. So I was like, okay, it won't be a problem. Like I'll be graduated by then. But anyway, I go into that first semester at UHart. We're starting preseason, and then all of a sudden the news like breaks out, like they're going D3 like next semester. Like it's just happening so fast. And I know like the whole semester, like we already lost a few guys because of the news, like Jordan Kadua, for example. Like he was also at University of Hartford, and then he was my teammate at URI after. He left right before any of that happened, so I just missed out playing with him at UHart. But yeah, like we still had a good team. We had good players, and I mean it was a good season. I got to play a lot as a freshman, and I guess that was one thing I was worried about. Coming in as a freshman, you never know like if you're gonna play. But I played, I think, every game, started every game. I had a decent season. I mean, numbers weren't great, 2 goals, 2 assists or something like that, but I was on the rookie team, so that was good. And, I remember like the last day of the season, literally there was a line outside of coach's door, like people were leaving. And I mean, it was, people want to stay at the highest level. So like the whole team was lined up and trying to enter the transfer portal. And yeah, dude, I mean, honestly, you don't really know where it takes you from there, but that's kind of
That's such an interesting situation that you find yourself in, because like obviously when teams aren't successful in general, you see a lot of players deciding, all right, I want to hop in the transfer portal and try and test my luck in a different conference or at a different university. But that's usually just on a season-to-season basis. Not often do you see programs transition divisions and you see players wanting to leave, obviously, because they're Division I quality players. They're not going down to compete at the Division III level.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what was the coaching staff like at this point? Because, I mean, from what I've always understood, when you have players that want to transfer, it's maybe not insulting necessarily, but it is difficult because you want to retain a lot of that talent. But I have to imagine that the staff, their hands were tied at that point. They would have wanted to try and help you move on, knowing the situation.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you could have worded it better. I mean, obviously it was a tough moment for everybody, like players and coaching staff. And I mean, the transition kind of affected everybody. I don't even know like if the coaches really knew where they were going to end up, if they were going to stay there, if they were going elsewhere. But I mean, the coaches there were great, like super understanding. I mean, end of the day, like I said, you have great players there and they all want to play at the highest level. So there's kind of no really other option that they could have besides like helping you out. So.
And so now at this point, the whole team's hopping in the portal. You're trying to maintain some level of continuity, staying at the same level, and it feels like you're almost like restarting in a way. And so you decide to transfer. What was the overall process like? Was it quick when you decided to transfer to URI? I mean, being a part of that rookie team and getting goals and assists as a freshman, really starting and playing at the level that you were, I have to imagine generated maybe more interest than you saw, at least during your high school recruiting process?
Yeah, for sure. I think like the goals, the contributions, the accolades, like they definitely helped me out. Well, once I was in the transfer portal, I mean, I had some offers from big schools and stuff like that. again, at that point, I still didn't know much about college soccer and stuff like that. But I knew some people at URI, and I had multiple visits. Like I went to UConn, I went to Vermont, and I guess it was more local. Obviously, it's easier to visit a school that's more local. So yeah, I went on a few visits, and I mean, it was a quick process. I think the portal was only open for like 3 weeks or something like that during that winter break. Um, so it was stressful. Like kind of every day you're on a phone call, like trying to figure out what the best option is. I mean, you just want to go where the best places where you could develop the most. And I mean, like day after day, like visits and stuff. Like I just ended up choosing URI. I mean, I knew some people there. They influenced me there. I love the guys. The facilities are amazing, and I mean that was the end option, I guess.
And so then you end up going to Kingston, becoming a part of the Rhode Island Rams, and 2022 is your first season, and it seems you pick up right where you left off with Hartford. 14 games, you start 12 of them, chip in with 5 goals and assists across the year. I mean, at this point now, what's your confidence looking like, knowing that you just switched from what was your first choice school, having to now reaffirm yourself in the eyes of a new coaching staff, in the eyes of new teammates and peers? Just at that point, though you already had some level of college soccer experience at that point, just what was your overall feeling like during that first season?
Yeah, so at that point I was still like pretty new to the whole experience. I mean, I was only a semester deep into college soccer, so I was still like pretty like timid, a little humble. But like I knew in my ability, and I knew that I could go there and compete. Obviously, it was a bigger school and a bigger conference, so you got to take that into consideration too. And I mean, I was just going there, and like I've always been kind of a day by day guy and just taking it as it goes in. And I mean, yeah, so just going in pretty confident and doing whatever I got to do.
And so then as the next couple of seasons progress, you're still dealing with some injury woes here and there, and the team isn't competing, let's say, at the highest level that the talent may have represented. Some difficult losses and difficult draws, especially during the last couple of seasons. I've seen you guys not make the postseason especially during 2023 and 2024. But so as that's sort of going on, and you're a player that's really striving to reach the professional level of the game, when you're in a position like that and you're trying to will your team forward and so on, how does that impact you in terms of your own personal growth as a player when you're on a team that's struggling to get results week in and week out, but you yourself are still trying to strive to grow and become that best player you can?
Yeah, so I don't know how to put it into words, but basically, like when the team's not performing, like you get less looks from other players. If you go postseason, you play like better teams and you have better competition. And like not to like throw any shade on URI or anything like that, because I love that school, but like even here, like kind of fast forward to the draft now, like we had a symposium with like all the players that were drafted, and they're all from like the big schools, like Duke, Clemson, all these places, whatever. And they ask you like where you play, and it's like you tell them University of Rhode Island, and they're like, oh, where's that? Like not to like throw any disrespect, but it's just like you don't make the tournament, you don't play against the best teams. Like coaches that are watching, they usually watch the better teams and see who the better players are. And I guess like if you don't make the tournament and stuff like that, your season is shorter and you kind of get left in the dust. So it definitely affects like who sees you and I guess how you do as a team. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's just what you got to work with.
And so then what about the injuries and dealing with that? Because obviously, like we alluded to earlier, I mean, even toward the end of this season, there were questions about whether the MLS was a possibility or if you were going to go test the waters of pursuing a career out in Europe in one of the lower leagues and working your way up. But at certain times, I have to imagine when you get knocked down, you get your first injury, it's like, all right, maybe it'll be okay. But then you start picking up a few more, and it really starts to bring you down because you can't string together consistent appearances, consistent minutes. So, I mean, even particularly during 2023, because that was, I would imagine, this real start of the injuries happening and then making its way into 2024. As that's going on, what are you doing to sort of work through that? I mean, physically, it's fairly obvious with the training that you do and the work that you do with the training staff at URI and working with the coaches. But mentally, what are you doing personally to try and push yourself through that to make sure you're able to end up in this position?
Yeah, so I mean, it was definitely a struggle. I mean, I've never been like a player that's been injured. End of the sophomore year, I picked up I tore my hip. So it was like a major surgery, and at first that was like my only like injury that I've like ever really had to be out for. So it was like a big hit for me, I mean, I didn't get to play for like 3 or 4 months, and then after that 3 or 4 months, they were like, okay, you actually need surgery. So then I was put out for another 4 months. So, I mean, the whole recovery almost took a year, and coming back from that, you do your physical therapy and stuff like that. But I mean, the mental side of the things is the hardest part. Like, you're sitting out, you're watching everybody else play, and it's the one thing you want to do, but you have no choice, and you got to do all the stupid exercises and therapy that you don't want to do. But I mean, like I said, you have to do it if you want to play. And I guess for me mentally, it was more like kind of just as you go on, you get stronger. As you deal with it more, you get stronger. And after like I recovered from the hip's been doing perfect. And then it was just kind of like your body like adjusts and other things start picking up to make up for your hip injury. Like, then I had like some small like hamstring pulls, and those put you out for a couple weeks, and then you come back in, you get hot again, and then it's another hamstring pull or it's another groin pull. And for me, like, I'm an explosive player, so it happens more often than not. So yeah, that's definitely the hardest part, the mental stuff. And then like for this last season, like, again, I had a hamstring pull against Providence, like minor, which was great. I came back in whatever it was, 2 or 3 weeks. And then senior night, first game, really back, 10 minutes in, it's just unfortunate, and you get tackled, and you have a high ankle sprain and some torn ligaments and stuff like that in your ankle. And again, that puts me in another situation now where even now I'm not fully recovered from it. And there was kind of 2 options going into it. Like I said, I was taking it day by day. It's been 3 months. I knew it was going to be a long recovery from it, but there was like 2 paths you could take. One is, kind of just take the surgery and wait it out and see how it goes from there. Or, kind of just push through the pain and see what you could get now. Like, kind of now is the golden time to try. So obviously, me, I want to play. So I took that. That's where I'm at right now.
And so one of the interesting things about you is that in spite of the injuries and the minutes dwindling down and not being able to really contribute a lot in 2023, you were named a captain in 2024. And clearly your leadership qualities and the hard work that you put in to battle through these injuries shined through in the eyes of the coaches, and they wanted to give you that leadership role for this season, along with Ivan Montoro, who featured on this show a few weeks ago. But how was that decision, how did that impact you? When you were named captain, was that something that you had strived for and that you wanted to do, as something that you wanted to finish your career in Rhode Island with? Or is that something that you were maybe indifferent to at the start and more wanted to just make sure that we got the team win? It didn't matter what role I had, just so long as the team was able to get a result.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it was, honest speaking, like, never really a goal to be captain. I've never been like a big voice like that. I always tended to do the right things, but I guess like for me, it was kind of even surprising to be named captain because like, it's hard to lead a team when you don't really play, or when you're out on the sidelines. But I guess for me, just building up and doing the right things and kind of being disciplined over the time, like, showed the coaches that I was capable of being a captain. And obviously that was something like I was very honored to have, and I tried my best. It's a new role for me too, and whatever. I tried my best with Ivan. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it was something that I was looking forward to end on. But it was a grateful experience for sure. It was a good experience.
And so then, with being named captain, you guys start the season on a heater, to be fair. I mean, 4 wins out of your first 5. You don't lose. You go invincible for the first 6 matches of the year before the start of A10 play. But as those games are going on, knowing the difficulties of what was last season, I'm curious just what was kind of going through your head during the first part of the year, knowing that this was your final season, knowing that you were a captain really leading this team, and then really in particular after that Providence win, injury aside, what was your overall feeling like about not only yourself, but this program, knowing that you guys were in a rich vein of form and that this is the type of performances that really does the most work in convincing scouts to take a chance on you in the MLS draft, for example?
Yeah, I mean, coming off of like 2 losing seasons, like the past 2 years, I think everybody was just more motivated. I mean, me included. I mean, for me, I've never been in a postseason tournament at that point, so it was obviously one of the goals on my plate. And for me, it was like, okay, I have the experience, I have the game time, and I know I have the ability to not carry the team because we had amazing players that could also impact the game, but at the same time, I have the ability to influence the game enough for us to be successful. And I think the beginning of the season, it started like that. I mean, we were, I think, amazing, killing everybody in respectful terms, but yeah, then obviously things take a turn, and I mean, I'm not one to really say excuses. Every team goes through adversity, but things happen, and we picked up injuries. I wasn't the only one, and then the lineups change and things start moving around. And I guess unfortunate for us, the A10 conference is skyrocketed in terms of competition. I mean, every team is competitive, and I think it's growing. It's getting up there with the big leagues. So yeah, I mean, obviously it took a turn for the worse, and things started falling apart. But I guess there was nothing really to do besides us just to go and play and try to stay as motivated as possible, and for me as well.
And obviously, the second half of the season was not particularly ideal in any terms, but I don't really think we need to dwell on that for that much. But I mean, I'm more curious just about when you look back on this season. Obviously, it didn't end in the fashion that you wanted, but it did in a way beyond the actual regular season with getting drafted. So when you look back on 2024, or in the fall of 2024, what are some of your most positive memories, I would imagine, stemming from that first half of the year? I can probably guess what maybe one of your top ones are, but I'm curious to hear what some of your moments that you take most pride in that maybe only you do.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like you mentioned, obviously it's that Providence game. I mean, it's just a rivalry that's been historic, and again, in my experience, we haven't beat Providence yet since I played with them, and I mean, it was just it's always a big game. So when you score a goal like that and you win that game, it's always a big deal, even though it's not a conference game. But yeah, that was probably the highlight of the year, even though I picked up an injury there too. But definitely the highlight of the year for me. And then I would just say, like, the start of the year, the momentum, like, kind of when things are going well, the team is very close and everything is great. Like, it's a high almost, and I would say that's definitely another highlight of the year as well. But I mean, I also enjoy it's weird to say, but I enjoy like the downfall of things as well. I feel like that's where you learn and develop the most. And you see like the true side of things for real. So I think that's where a lot where you not only learn about yourself, but learn how to like play in a team and how to deal with certain different things. And yeah, I guess I'll take that as a highlight as well, because it's a learning curve for sure.
And so then with that learning curve, and then come the very abrupt end of the season, and it's something I learned very quickly, because once the season ends, it's done. Practices are done. Everything's just finished.
Shut
And
down.
so for you, knowing that you were still dealing with that injury toward the end of the year, I know that I remember asking you, you were like, when are you going to be able to play? And you were like still wondering if you were going to be able to play in a combine come December.
Yeah.
And so with that abrupt end, obviously you have the lessons that you can learn about yourself, your friends, your coaches, your teammates, and so on during this losing streak. But now that the season's over, it's finished.
Mm-hmm.
How did you transition into the offseason and into this sort of professional team searching landscape? Like, what were some of the steps that you took? I imagine that you had to go look for an agent and really sort of push yourself out there, knowing that you couldn't play in any of the earlier combines ahead of the draft.
Yeah, so I mean, the first step for me was just to stay training and stay doing whatever I can, like just for whatever happens, if I play, if I get surgery, whatever. Um, so it was always like my priority to kind of just keep going. And even though I couldn't do much at that time in terms of, ball work and stuff like that and team playing, just going and doing like the cardio and stuff. I mean, most of that winter I was doing like 2 sessions a day trying to stay fit. I mean, the sessions weren't anything crazy because again, I was limited, but yeah, that was definitely the priority. But the second thing, I was lucky enough to, during the summer, I played with the Western Mass Pioneers, and I was lucky enough that there was an agent there, and he found interest in me. So I've been in contact with him throughout the whole season, and he's definitely helped me. Like I've been talking to him throughout that whole time, like as soon as the season was over, and trying to figure out what the best option is. And it was a stressful moment as well. Like you don't know what's gonna happen next, and school's done, so you can't go back to school, but life is beginning. So yeah, it was just training and trying to figure everything out at that point.
And so then, as that process is going on, you're recovering, you're starting to be able to kick a ball again. What are the conversations with your agent like? Are you guys sort of trying to hash out what's the best avenue, or is it get through the MLS draft cycle and then see, because you're encountering the January transfer window and a lot of the movement for at least Western Hemisphere clubs? A lot of these teams start in January and their seasons start January, February, and so on. But so what was that? What was that approach like? Were you focused on the MLS at first and seeing if there was a possibility, or was it whatever opportunity fell upon you first that looked like it was the most enticing?
For me, it was just whatever opportunity that I could get at my hands at that point. Um, yeah, it's honestly it's just whatever came to me is what I would take.
And with the draft coming around, it was obviously a surprise, but was there ever a moment where you thought that it was a possibility, or were you kind of going into it being maybe that maybe a late pick, maybe I can get looked at as like an undrafted guy or so on? What was your sort of confidence in your heart and your family sort of telling you?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I had my agent throughout the whole season, and I think starting off really hot in the beginning of the season kind of brought a lot of attention towards me. So at that point, like the first 8 games when I was playing, I was like, okay, like if I keep this up, like I almost like locked it in terms of being drafted and stuff like that. But then as things like started to slow down, I got injured again. I had some teams where from the MLS where they were interested and they kind of wanted me to go and draft it, so I'd be like picked up under the table and come in as a trialist or whatever. Um, but like I said, the draft was kind of in my head was kind of out the window at that point because I was like, okay, I haven't played that much compared to all the other guys that are nominated and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I guess it was just whatever happened.
And so the draft night comes, are you with your family watching it, or are you kind of just like going through your own thing? Is your agent kind of telling you, hey, you should pay attention to this, pay attention to that? Like there's possibility X, Y, and Z could happen?
Yeah, so like throughout that whole season, there was like my agent would tell me like there's teams interested. So like on that draft night, he was just like, all right, like it was a weird draft thing because it was just a website this year. Like you just had to kind of refresh and stuff. So I would like watch a podcast that they were kind of reviewing the whole draft, whatever was going on. So I was sitting with my family, and my agent was just telling me like, oh, you could watch and like whatever happens, we'll see. Um, and literally, my dad like ended up walking inside the house from work, and like as soon as he walked up the stairs, and we were sitting on the couch watching, like they called my name. It was just a good moment.
That's amazing. I mean, I can't imagine just like that feeling of like knowing that your name had been called. I mean, you're sitting there. What's the first thing that's jumping through your mind when you're actually listening to your name get called alongside Austin FC?
Yeah, it was so. My like best friend texted me just like saying like yo in like capital letters like congrats, and I was just so confused because I was like yo, what's going on, like I didn't see it. And then I look on my screen and it pops up, and I was like, okay, so he spoiled it for me a little bit. But even then I was just kind of like I was like almost zoned out, like I was just sitting there like in shock, like I didn't even believe it happened, and like my mom was jumping around, and of course, tearing up a little bit. My dad was happy, but then it kind of hit me. Like my agent called me, and the manager from the club called me and stuff like that. So it kind of like all. It was a long night, kind of just taking it all in because it happened so fast. But it was a great feeling.
And so Austin FC is an interesting club. It's one that has been making a lot of moves in the transfer window this year, and especially recently. So I'm curious, when you were thinking about the MLS in general, did you have any sort of short list of teams that you would most like to play for in like a perfect world? And when you got the call from the officials at Austin FC and you got to like have those sort of initial conversations, what were those like? What were they selling, or not pitching you or selling you on, but rather telling you that you were going to be a part of? What was that sort of that pitch, I guess, that they were giving you?
Yeah, so like I didn't have a team that I was like, okay, I want to be here, I want to be there. For me, it's just whatever opportunity arises is good with me. And like I mentioned, like I had teams that were interested, and it's funny, like Austin was never one of the teams I heard really. So it was funny that they drafted me. But then yeah, like that phone call, like it was a quick phone call. He was just like, congratulations, like enjoy this moment, we'll keep in touch soon. Like I'll just let you be with your family, blah 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 blah, whatever. But it's a new club, and they're a growing club, and it's a great city. So, I was talking to players at that time, and managers and scouts there, and literally everyone at the club, and they all tell you like it's a great city and it's a developing city. And this year they actually have a new staff, a new head coach. So things were new, obviously, and it's like a Spanish style coaching staff, so it's more European style. So it's also an interesting time, and I think it's not only me like learning how things are going, but it's the whole team and the whole staff that are here right now. It's still only 2 weeks into preseason at this point, so everybody's still learning how things are going and what the system is. So, I mean, yeah.
And so you just said it there. You're 2 weeks into preseason. I mean, we were talking about it a little bit before we started. I'm just curious, how's it been? What's been different? How different is the style? Because, I mean, I said it to you earlier. I remarked about watching when you guys would practice, how much of a jump it is just from any level below it, Division I soccer being as good as it is. But even the higher you get in Division I soccer, the closer and closer you get to, like, pro level. And so now you're hitting that pro level. What have been some of the biggest differences or surprises that you've had in this first week or so?
Yeah, so I mean, in general, it's just been a crazy experience. Like I'm just so grateful to have this experience in the first place. But like coming in, I was like a little nervous. You're playing in the pros and you're playing against the pros, and you're not on a contract. You're a trialist and you're trying to make a name for yourself, but you're also trying to find a balance. You're not trying to go in and be this cocky guy. Like you want to fit in with the team and all that stuff. So. It was stressful, especially the first few days, and trying to figure out how things work. And I mean, it's unbelievable how it works at the next level. I mean, like the trainings are insane. I mean, for me, first of all, it's just amazing to like be training again. I was out for such a long time, and I mean, for me, like playing is my favorite thing to do. So just being back on the field in the first place is already just the greatest feeling. And then in training, like it's just better in every aspect. Like everything is faster paced. You have a system. Everything is organized. It's like all to a T. I don't really know how to word it, but it's crazy.
So have they given you any idea about what the next few months are going to look like for you? I mean, I imagine that you'll probably start with their MLS Next Pro side and work your way up through their ranks there. I mean, have you gotten the chance to meet and befriend guys who are on their development side?
Yeah, so the first day, actually, I was training with the second team because the first team was running fitness tests and they didn't want us to run the fitness test. So I trained with the first team. I met a few of those guys, and right now they're really like short roster. They only have, I think, 11 guys signed to that team. And even the first team is pretty short roster. They have 23. I mean, they're making signings now, like you just mentioned. So I don't know exactly the number, but it's a short like player club, and everything is growing, everything is new, like I mentioned before. But you do meet everybody, and players kind of bounce back and forth between like first team training and second team training. and second team has, academy players too. So you really meet everybody, and it's like a good community. The buildings are connected, so like I said, you see everybody every day. Yeah.
And so it's not often that I get the chance to talk to people from URI that have been able to transition immediately into professional sporting life. But I'm curious, you mentioned it earlier, that learning curve that comes with not getting success at the end of the season or going on difficult runs where like you look at that in a positive note to an extent. Are there any lessons or moments, like learning curve moments like that you've taken from URI that you think are now going to really help you and progress and enhance your career at Austin FC? Maybe stuff that you think will come in handy down the line, or even in the past 2 weeks, stuff that you've had to get used to that you have maybe been somewhat prepared for because of what you've done at URI?
Yeah, I think one of the things is like I mentioned, when things get hard, you kind of just got to put your head down and keep going. I mean, obviously, it's hard for everybody to deal with difficult times, but you just got to keep pushing through, and there's a brighter side at the end of the day. And I was talking to one of the staff members here, and even my agent, and they said something that has been sticking with me for the last 2 weeks. Is like, you climb up one mountain and you get to the top, but in order for you to get to the top of the next mountain, you have to stay at the bottom. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm at the bottom of the mountain, and you go from one team where you're kind of the star player to another team where you're working for a contract in the first place, like you're not even on the team yet. So it's completely opposite, and it's hard, it's stressful, but that's the beauty of it, really. And I guess like all the difficult times that you kind of go through prepare you for the difficult time you're going through right now.
And just kind of thinking back to your origins, coming from Connecticut. Connecticut is not the biggest soccer state by any means, but it is consistently growing, and you're starting to see more big names come out of the state, one of which is a friend of ours, Patrick Gryczewski. I know the two of you are very close, and I have to imagine he was one of the first people that reached out to you when you got the call. Just, have you had any conversations with him recently, and has he given you any advice as to how to go about this? Because obviously in the past few weeks, we've seen that it's really panned out for Pat, and he's off and running. So I imagine that you may want to make blaze your own trail, so to speak, but he may have a little bit of a blueprint that you can follow to help you kind of get your career kick-started too. So have you had any conversations with him recently about that?
Yeah, before even being drafted, I have the utmost gratitude for Pat. He's helped me so much. I've had multiple conversations with him before even being drafted, just so how to go about things. And if you know Pat, he's probably the most humble guy you'll ever meet and the nicest guy, and he's always there to give you a helping hand. So I would always ask him because he has experience. We come from the same state. We kind of come from a similar background, and we never played for a big academy and stuff like that. And obviously his story is unbelievable, D3, D1, and all that stuff, and now he's with the U.S. national team, and I'm proud of him, like it's crazy. But yeah, like I talked to him a few days ago, and he just asks you how you're doing, and anything you really need, like he'll help you, even though obviously he's going through a lot now too. I'm sure it's not easy with the national team or anything like that, but he's always there to help you, and he's definitely one of the first to reach out and the first to help me, so I'm super grateful for that man right there.
Yeah, no, he is fantastic. Hopefully get him on the podcast soon. We've definitely been talking about that with him. I need to hear everything about that first USMNT goal, because it seems like almost every goal he scores is the exact same way. Just getting fed in through the middle, and he just starts running through people. I love it. But, just to sort of wrap this up, I'm more or less just curious about what your expectations are for the next few months for yourself. Obviously, a lot of this has come as a very big surprise, and you're a guy that really likes to take things day by day and keep it sort of slow-paced and really enjoy everything. But now, knowing the position that you're in and just the work that you've done to get there, what are your expectations for the next few months to a year with Austin FC? What are you most looking forward to being a part of at this new club?
Yeah, so my first expectation was obviously that it's just going to be difficult. No matter what, I'm going to have to work like a dog and try to get the job done. But my whole goal, I kind of like reevaluated, and my whole goal is just to learn as much as I can. Um, there's older players here, there's younger players than me that are playing on the first team, and they have more experience, and it's a new level. So I'm just here to learn at the end of the day and get myself better, wherever that takes me. If it's playing with the second team, if it's playing with the first team, if it's somewhere else, that's whatever it is. I mean, I'm just here to learn and get better.
And outside of that, what are some things, or what's one big thing that Austin FC fans should know about you, since you're now one of the newest members of their young organization?
Yeah, I mean, I'm humble and I'm just hardworking and I'm so dedicated to the game that I'll really do whatever. I mean, I don't really know what to say about myself like that, but I'm just gonna keep going until I can.
Well, love it. Pat, Jiggy, God, I hope that nickname picks up when you start getting minutes in the MLS. But dude, I'm so happy for you, and thank you so much for taking the time to hop on the show today. I mean, I was working when I saw that you got the selected by Austin, and I pulled over. I called you like twice. I was like, dude, no way. So I'm thrilled for you, and I'm very excited to see really just how you get on. And as an MLS journalist myself, I will be very much looking forward to when New York City FC faces off against Austin later this year, because who knows where you will end up and if you will be featuring in that game or not, but we shall see. But Jiggy, Pat,
Thank you,
thank you
truly,
so much,
bro.
dude.
I appreciate it so much.
Dude, of course, it means a lot. But everyone else listening at home or wherever you are, thank you so much for tuning in. Here, it's 2025. We are back. A lot of big things are coming for Mark's Remarks this year, so be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter, X, at Mark's Remarks Pod for all updates, and I will see y'all in the next one.